Hi, where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments. I landed at SFO in the same wrinkled blue suit I'd slept in for 2 nights. I'd just come off a flight from London, riding the high of closing a 4-year distributions chase that took more grit than I care to admit. We'd locked in tastings at hotels so expensive the valet probably made more than my first paycheck. I figured I'd swing by the office, crack a bottle in the break room, and toast the crew for finally cracking Europe. But the place was dead quiet. Jenna's desk, empty, no sticky notes, no sarcastic mug, just air. My gut tightened. I walked into my office and saw it right away. A white envelope with my name on it, neat block letters like a kid labeling a school test. Harold's handwriting, thick, steady, like a man who never second-guessed a damn thing. I opened it. Inside was the usual boardroom legal fluff. Paragraphs and clauses and all the phrases that sound polite when they're gutting you. One line stuck out. Bryce Pike has been appointed Chief Executive Officer effective immediately. Bryce, my wife's kid brother, the same genius who almost poisoned his friends trying to ferment wellness mead in a garage. The one who once called our flagship Syrah kinda grapey in front of a James Beard chef like he was helping. I didn't yell, didn't flip a desk. I just walked to the window and stared at the vineyard rows I'd spent 12 years straightening with my own hands. When I married into this family, Pike Wines was basically a mess with a view. Cracked tanks, handwritten invoices on napkins, tasting room, looked like a yard sale. I rebuilt that place. 12 harvests, 3 canceled vacations, and more midnight floor scrubbing than I'll ever admit. I gave them a system, clean books, real buyers, a crew that knew their job and didn't need babysitting, and now I was out. I sat down slow. My legs remembered they were 57, not 27. Opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the private ledger I kept. Not shady, just mine. Contacts I earned, buyers who trusted me, chefs who texted me direct, people who knew I delivered. I slid it into my old leather bag, added the folder of deal notes I never shared. Then I looked at the press clippings on the wall. Never framed them. Didn't want to be that guy. I turned off the light with the back of my hand. No goodbye, no note, just facts. I wasn't sticking around to clap for my own replacement. I drove south. No music, no calls. Just silence, all the way to a cedar cabin I'd fixed up near Lake San Antonio. Rural rental project that never went anywhere. Small place. Smelled like pine and old coffee. I dropped my bag, washed my face, and sat on the porch till my shoulders stopped hugging my ears. This wasn't quitting. This was a quiet switch of fields. And Bryce, he didn't even know the clock had started. Next morning, I woke with the sun and bare feet on a cold floor. The kind of cold that clears your head. I brewed coffee thick enough to stand a spoon in and sat at the little table watching fog slide over the hills like a slow tide. Nobody needed anything from me. No emails, no calendar pings, no texts from people who never lifted a case but always needed a fix by 8 a.m. sharp. I pulled on boots and hit the same dirt trail I'd walked since I bought the place. Past the busted windmill that never spun. The row of half-pruned vines the old owners gave up on. They leaned like drunks after last call, and I respected them for it. No pretense, just doing their best to hold on. Back at the cabin, the phone lit up like it had been waiting for an audience. 4 calls from the main office line. 5 more from unknown. Another 5 from numbers I knew by heart, but didn't care to name out loud. Suddenly I was popular. I slid the phone into the drawer and shut it. You'd be surprised how gentle a day feels when nothing interrupts it. I grabbed a legal pad and wrote 3 lines. Nothing fancy. What happened, how I feel, what I want next. I stared at it a while. Thought about the first season I took over operations, back when we had more problems than product. No consultants, no backup plan. Just tanks that needed cleaning and pumps that coughed if you looked at them sideways. I ran hoses, scrubbed steel, and mopped the crush pad until my back screamed. My hands smelled like sanitizer and tannin for weeks. Tessa's family gave me polite nods. Dolores with her tight-lipped smile like I was the hired help that married in. Harold would clap me on the shoulder and say, "Someday, son, you'll be a partner." That someday packed a bag and left years ago. But I didn't just wait, I made moves. Once the cash flow turned, I brought in real pros. Soil guys who didn't guess. Barrel guys who knew oak by scent. A lab team that caught flaws before they hit the bottle. We stopped bleeding returns. Our books cleaned up. The quarterly reports stopped looking like panic attacks. And while I was fixing the engine, Bryce flew drones over the vines and called it brand storytelling. I bit my tongue. I thought if the numbers stood tall, I wouldn't have to. Turns out numbers whisper, and families clap for noise. That night, I sat on the porch again. Poured a glass of the 2017 Reserve we'd named after Tessa's grandfather, the one who taught me to sniff out frost and time irrigation by instinct. It tasted clean. Long finish, like a man who'd said his piece and didn't need to repeat it. I wasn't falling apart. I was sharpened. There's a difference. They took the job, not the blueprint. I still had it. In my gut, in my notes, in the rhythms I'd built with people who didn't care whose name was on the bottle as long as the wine showed up right. I knew who ordered light in spring and heavy in October, who panicked early and who needed a reminder call, who stuck around only because they knew I'd answer when things went sideways. They thought they replaced operations. What they really did was cut their own parachute cords and smile while doing it. I wasn't dramatic, but I was methodical, and I don't like being erased. The air outside smelled like oak leaves and wet stone, and I let it fill my lungs while I walked to the truck. My jaw was tight, but my hands were steady. I hadn't raised my voice. Didn't need to. The damage was already leaking through the fancy tablecloth. I pulled out of the estate drive slow. The gravel made a sound that didn't ask permission. Back at the cabin, I poured the rest of that 17 Reserve and let it settle while I stood at the counter. The kitchen light hummed. I didn't touch my phone. Didn't need to see if anyone followed up. They wouldn't. Not yet. That tasting wasn't a warm family thing. It was bait with candles. And Bryce? He thought he was rebranding a legacy like it was a social app rollout. The zero proof line. The clean slate tag. That was a swing for a market he didn't understand. Built on buyers who didn't care if you had a drone shot of your crush pad at sunrise. And now, they'd lost crown and thistle. I didn't toss and turn that night. I slept like a guy who'd pulled a splinter, the kind that's been in your palm for years, too deep to grab until someone pushed just hard enough. The next morning, I made coffee and walked the trail again. Same leaning vines, same windmill with no fight left in it. Felt honest. By noon, my inbox was doing laps. Not family, the industry folks. A sommelier from LA who used to ignore me at tastings suddenly wanted to connect soon. A chef I once bailed out when his Christmas Eve order didn't land asked if I was still consulting. I wasn't answering yet. Let them sweat. That afternoon, I made a list. Not names, not plans. Just friction points. The cracks that'd show up first if the wrong guy kept holding the wheel. They thought they pushed me out clean. What they really did was light a match next to a gas line. And that dinner? That was the first spark. The next morning, the tone of the calls changed. It wasn't Dolores checking if I was feeling better. It wasn't Tessa, still silent. It wasn't even Harold pretending he hadn't been in the room when Bryce got crowned. It was real people. People who knew what I'd done, not what they read on some press release. The vineyard manager from 3 owners back. The one who once said I wasn't a wine guy, just married into it. He called. I was wrong, he said, like it cost him something to admit. Then the boutique distributor out of Portland, the guy who could quote terms line by line, and once told me I wrote better contracts than lawyers. If you're making moves, he said, we want in before the doors close. A hotel group VP, the same one who'd once refused to take a call unless Harold or Bryce was on it, called me direct. No pretense. You saved our ass the year the snow shut down I-80. Whatever you're building now, I want in. Another voice I hadn't heard in years said, if you ever go independent, even part-time, we'll make the money worth it. I let them talk. Took no bait. Gave no promises. Then I hung up, cleared the table, and opened a clean notebook. Time to do the only thing that mattered. Build the leverage portfolio. Page 1, buyers. Not all of them. Just the ones I knew would walk if I gave them a reason they could say out loud. I wrote names, cut off dates, the sentence each one liked to hear when a shipment got late or a vintage ran hot. I know you don't want excuses. We're already working the fix. You'll be made whole before Friday. Check marks went next to the ones who said, more than once, I trust you. Not the label, not the Pike family. Just me. I wasn't guessing. I had call logs and emails burned into memory. Page 2, vendors and shippers, quiet favors. The bottle plant in Stockton we floated when their furnace broke mid-December. They would have missed half their contracts if I hadn't rerouted parts through a buddy up in Seattle. The foil guy, I talked off a cliff when he was about to miss payroll. I pulled a prepay with a distributor and wired it overnight. The label printer down in Paso, who never once charged me rush fees because the year his press jammed mid-run, I sent a team at 2 a.m. and stayed until it was running again. These aren't debts you flash around. They're songs. You play them only when the moment matters. Page 3, contracts. The ones Bryce didn't know existed because he never sat through the ugly meetings. I found 7 with 30-day exit clauses tied to quality standards or messaging conflicts. One paragraph in one page that could shake $7 million loose with a polite letter and a reason. My handwriting isn't pretty, but it's damn clear. Dates, terms, clauses. The trapdoor math that could collapse a quarter if you weren't ready for it. I flagged the key ones in red, lined them up like chess pieces. This wasn't bluffing. This was counting. I don't talk about war. Men get stupid when they do. But I believe in pressure. And pressure is just math that people feel in their bones. You don't need to scream or slam doors. You just remind people who trusted you why they did. And give them a cleaner path to follow when the new guy stumbles. I'd been that path for a dozen years, whether they put my name on the door or not. I shut the notebook, set it under the coffee mug. The cabin didn't feel like hiding anymore. It felt like a garage where you rebuild something old and worth keeping. No ranting online, no public chest beating, just a plan that would land like gravity, slow, steady, and impossible to ignore. I slept like a man who remembered the sound of a tight ship running clean. The offer came in 2 days later, Lark and Howe out of Napa. Not the kind of call that wastes your time. Their COO, Brennan Tate, had been a name in my head for years. We used to go head-to-head for shelf space, trade placements like punches. He won by inches, smart operator, no fluff. He asked me to lunch at a spot with plain tables and strong coffee. No linen, no performance. We didn't shake hands right away. We sat, ordered black coffee, and got to it. He slid a folder across like we were swapping old baseball cards. "Your team, your call," he said. "West Coast footprint, equity vests in 4. We'll match your old comp and then some." He didn't butter me up. No compliments, no small talk, just facts. I respected that. I opened the folder, but didn't touch the papers. Clean offer, big budget, good people. It was solid, one of those chances most guys dream of. He watched my eyes and didn't rush. "You don't strike me as a man who wants a new boss," he said finally with a half smile. "You strike me as a man who's offended." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, laughed once. "You're not wrong." He nodded, like he didn't need more than that. Started talking through the pitch, their next phase, their new barrel program, their aim to snap up the same high-end hotel accounts I just nailed down in Europe. "You could run this and be home by 7, he added. That one hit harder than I expected. Home by 7 sounded like fiction, but I didn't feel ready to retire from a fight I never started. This wasn't about salary. I wasn't chasing comfort. I was chasing correction. I took a slow sip of coffee, thought about all the ways this could have been easier, less personal, cleaner, but that wasn't how I was built. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "and the straight talk, but I can't do it. Not now." He didn't flinch. "Door stays open." We stood, shook hands, firm, quiet, like two men who might work together one day, but not today. Out in the parking lot, I sat in my truck and dropped my forehead against the wheel. 5 inches of paper had just offered me another life. I could have taken it. I could have gone home, cooked dinner at a normal hour, answered emails like a civilian. But I'd wake up one day, see Pike Family Wines on a trade site, rebranding after poor Q3, and I'd know I let people who didn't earn it write the ending. Couldn't do it. This wasn't about burning down the house. It was about turning the lights back on, the way they used to be. I drove back to the cabin with the windows down, wind in my face, that old dirt smell rising off the hills. I thought about the first pallet I packed right, measured, tight corners, shrink wrap clean. I remembered how it felt seeing it land without a hitch. That was the feeling I missed. Not applause, not praise, just the work done right. That's what I wanted back. Not a new title, not a raise, just control of the thing I built. And a boundary that meant something, one that said, You don't get to use me, replace me, and then expect me to clap from the porch like a tired dog. Not happening. The tires crunched slow over the gravel as I pulled into the estate driveway. I parked in my usual spot like nothing had changed. Like I hadn't been iced out by my own in-laws and replaced by a hobbyist in a blazer. The front door creaked open before I knocked. Dolores stood there in a spotless apron she definitely bought for this. "Mason," she said like we were at a wake, not a setup. "Come in." The second I stepped inside, I smelled it. Bay leaves, onions, red wine, the kind of roast that sat low in the oven all day. Smelled like my grandmother's house on a cold Sunday. The counters were scrubbed shiny, not a crumb out of place. Too perfect, too staged. We didn't sit in the dining room. She led me to the island where 2 plates were already set. She handed me mine and watched like she was waiting for a reaction. I took a bite, salted just right, tender. Real effort went into this. That meant something. She folded the same towel in her hands again and again. "Bryce is struggling," she said quietly. I chewed slow and looked out the window. He wasn't ready. She didn't argue, just kept folding. "Your father-in-law believed in him." Of course he did. She didn't mention Tessa. She didn't have to. Tessa hadn't called, hadn't texted. She'd made her choice in silence. Dolores took a breath. "We need you to steady things, quietly, behind the scenes, no titles, no drama." She smiled like it was a gift, like she was offering me dignity. I set my fork down. "I don't do quiet anymore," I said, "and I don't do shadows." Her knuckles tightened around the towel. I laid it out clean. 30% equity, co-CEO. Operational control goes to me. Bryce steps down, publicly. He can stay on as the face, pour wine at festivals, smile in photos. He keeps a salary, but no say. She didn't blink. I get veto power on spend and product. No side deals, no soft handshakes with Harold. Everything in writing, where the lawyers can't dress it up and gut it later. She flinched just a little. "That's a lot," she said, voice tight. "It's fair," I said, "and it's not negotiable." I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even mad. I sounded like a guy ordering new irrigation lines. I'm not here to patch leaks while someone else poses on stage. Either I run the ship with a piece of the hull, or I walk. Let it sink. That's on you. She turned to the sink, picked up a glass that was already clean, rinsed it for no reason. The room went still. Just the sound of the faucet and the leaves outside breathing slow in the wind. I wiped my hands, stood up. "When you're ready to choose sense over sentiment, call me," I said. "Not before." I left the plate half finished. Roast like that deserved better. But I wasn't there for dinner. My boots echoed off the tile as I walked out. She didn't follow, didn't beg. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what I was, and she knew they didn't have a better option. The Napa air was cool and clean when I pulled up. Glass walls, soft jazz, servers who topped your water like they knew your name. One of those places picked on purpose so nobody could yell without looking insane. I walked in right on time, not early, not late. Harold sat with his hands folded like he was trying not to throw something. Bryce wore a blazer too tight in the shoulders. Dolores had her "let's be civil" face on, tight smile, eyes flat. I didn't offer greetings, just slid a folder across the table to Harold and leaned back. Everything was typed clean, no fluff. Co-CEO, 30% equity vested immediately. Operational control to me. Veto power on product and spend. Bryce, reassigned to brand and community. 0 input on operations. Smile, pour wine, pose for photos. Stay out of the engine room. I added a 1 sheet for the press rollout. No slogans, just facts. I'd watched these people try to reposition before. Looked like a tourism ad with grapes. Also included a draft letter to distributors, clear contacts, my number, not his. Bryce flipped through half a page, snorted like a teenager. "You want to gut me in public," he said. "Make me small." I looked straight at him. "You did that when you turned a functioning winery into a content feed. I'm not gutting you. I'm putting you where you can't make more of a mess." His face went red, but he didn't move. I kept my tone flat. This wasn't about theatrics. This was about a clock. "Dad," he said. The way he said it, like he was waiting for a whistle. Harold didn't look at him. He looked at me. I didn't like how you built it, he said, voice dry like gravel. Didn't like the outside hires, the consultants, the lab spending, but the numbers don't lie. Bryce blinked hard. You said I deserved a shot. You got one, Harold said, and you got in over your head. Dolores jumped in, her voice all sugar again. He's young, he made mistakes. We all do, I said, standing. What you do next is what sticks. I pulled out a signed copy and set it on the table. You've got 72 hours to finalize. After that, Brennan at Larkin Howe gets a very detailed list of what's loose here, and how I can steady it somewhere else. I let it hang, no need to puff my chest, just math and timing. I turned to leave. Behind me, Bryce's voice cracked. What am I supposed to do? I stopped, glanced back. Smile for cameras, pour at festivals, be charming. You're decent at that. Then I walked. My shoes clicked on the stone like punctuation. Outside, the air felt sharp and clear. I didn't feel like I'd won. Felt like I'd built a doorway. And just told them the hinges were already on. The morning I walked back through the glass doors, fog hung low over the rows. The place smelled like cold grapes and wet earth. You either love that smell, or you don't belong here. Word travels fast in this business, heads lifted in the bullpen. Jenna from scheduling mouthed finally when I passed. I didn't stop. Just kept moving, folder in hand, no parade, no welcome back, just the seat and the work. The conference room filled itself. Nobody had to be called. I took the chair at the end of the table, the one that's only yours if you know what to do next. Bryce was already there, scrolling his phone like it was urgent. I set the new org chart down in front of me like a clean invoice. This won't take long, I said. First, Bryce moves to brand and community, media, events, tastings. He'll do great. I didn't look his way. The memo had gone out at 8. This was just ceremony. Second, we're walking back the zero-proof launch and the influencer budget. We're not a seltzer company. We do heritage lots, tight releases, clean delivery. If it doesn't fit that, we don't chase it. A low murmur passed around the table. Not loud, just relief. Shoulders settled. Breathing came easier. Third, we rebuild trust, not just with buyers and chefs. In here, no surprises, no side deals. You bring trouble early. We solve it, write it down, and make sure it doesn't show up twice. Luis from logistics raised a hand. So you're really back? I looked at him. I never left, I said. And it wasn't a line. My name didn't have to be on the door. My word had never stopped traveling. Bryce cleared his throat and stood. He read a short statement about supporting the new direction and respecting the decision. It sounded coached, but that didn't matter. He didn't fight. That was enough. I closed the folder. Let's get back to work. No applause, no hugs, just motion. The only sound that matters in a place like this. 3 months later, I sat on the deck above the crush pad with a glass of the new vintage. Sun slid over the ridge. We'd just finished our best quarter on record. Press was clean. The hotel accounts were back. The noise had quieted. My phone buzzed. A text from Dolores. Sunday dinner, just us, no business. I stared at it a beat, then typed, I'll bring a bottle, not to show off, not to prove anything, to be family, plain and simple. I didn't think about titles. I thought about the work done right and the silence you earn when a place runs clean. That's ownership, not of land, not of logos, of myself. And nobody gets to vote on that.